Welcome to the 2021-2022 Rater Reliability Evaluator training. This is the training required of all evaluators prior to conducting formal observations. At this time, we encourage you to download the PDF companion file to the Rater Reliability training so that you can click on any hyperlinks you notice in this recording that may be of interest to you as you go along. Please feel free to press pause and then press play again when you're ready to proceed. By the end of this training, we hope you're able to share a common understanding of the Louisiana evaluation tools, practices, and the impact of this data on teacher certification. This training will cover the evaluation rationale and policy, continuation of evaluation and certification, the elements of evaluation, inclusive of the 2021-2022 professional practice scores and student performance scores, virtual considerations, rater reliability norming, and finally, resources and a survey that will confirm your attendance. Do be sure to click on the link at the last slide of the PDF version of this presentation so that you can confirm your attendance today. We will begin with an overview of evaluation, law, and policy. So the word compass is used quite a bit, and it can be subdivided into several usages. We wanted to clarify the varying ways that the word compass may be used, and perhaps in turn, clarify some questions that you have. So compass in general refers to the entire system of evaluation, whereas the compass rubric is the name of the recommended rubric used by the majority of school districts for evaluation and of professional practice. Note that the NIET and class rubrics are also automatically accepted, whereas other rubrics should be submitted for approval using the alternate rubric waiver form. We'll talk about that later. Finally, we have the Compass Information System, or CIS. This is our IT system. It's the required system of record to enter both professional practice scores and student outcome scores, or the sum total of evaluation scores. Now that we've outlined the three uses of the word compass, we want to remind you to look at the components and the process of evaluation in law and policy. The components of evaluation include defining a job description. This means determining at the LEA or school systems level who will be labeled as T for teacher, L for leader, O for other in the CIS system. This label then determines the planning for the sequential evaluation components named here: professional growth planning process, observation and data collection process, professional development and support. When these components of evaluation are not provided, professional staff may file a grievance using the grievance process. You can read along with the policy here while I voice over. Again, the purpose of evaluation is to provide support to our professional staff so they can be the very best at their jobs and therefore the very best for our students. For evaluation to be a process of professional growth, we need to implement it as a process of professional development. It's also important to denote the connection of evaluation to certification. When school personnel are evaluated by the standards of effectiveness, those scores can be entered into the Compass Information System or system of record, and the certification department can access those scores to issue and renew certificates. An educator's certification can be renewed or advanced if the educator receives 3 effective evaluations in the initial or renewal period. Advancement from a level 1 to level 2 certificate is contingent upon both effective evaluations and 3 years experience in the educator's certification area. To advance or renew a teaching or leader certificate, 3 effective evaluations are required within the validity period of that certificate. If an educator or leader is not evaluated, certification renewal or advancement is hindered or prevented. Please note, due to COVID-19, the 2019-2020 evaluations were waived and don't count for or against any educator. Certificates were extended by 1 year to account for this lost year in evaluations. When components of the process of evaluation are not met by an LEA, a grievance can be filed. Remember that LEAs are required to have a grievance policy established to address the components of due process of evaluation in Bulletin 130. This bulletin outlines all the regulations for the evaluation and assessment of school personnel. LEAs should include in their local personnel evaluation plans a description of the procedures for resolving conflict or grievances related to evaluation results in a fair, efficient, effective, and professional manner. And finally, Section 13 outlines the justifiable rationale for filing a grievance or appeal to an evaluation score. Note that failure by an LEA to adhere to the components of evaluation is a grievable matter. Charter schools annually shall also evaluate every teacher and administrator employed at the school using the value-added assessment model and measures of student growth as determined by the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. Charters are beholden to the standards of effectiveness and reporting in the Compass information system. Please note the sections of Bulletin 130 outlined at the bottom of this slide that apply to charters. Now we will unpack the components of the elements of evaluation, starting with student outcomes. The total evaluation scores are comprised of two different types of scores: professional practice scores and student outcome scores. Professional practice scores are the observation scores, which we'll get to shortly, comprise 50% of the total score. And this year, for every evaluated personnel, will comprise two formal observations. When we get to student outcomes, we're looking at the value-added model known as VAM and the student learning targets known as SLTs. So if you're a non-VAM teacher, your SLTs comprise 50% of your total score. If you're a VAM teacher, your SLTs comprise 15% of your total score, and VAM will comprise 35% of your total score. So let's look a little more deeply at VAM and SLTs. The value-added model measures student success compared to similar peers year to year. VAM will be calculated for the 2021-2022 school year. The VAM predicts how well students will perform on the assessment in comparison to their peers with similar prior assessment scores and background. Once a student has taken state assessments, the model shows the extent to which his or her achievement was on target with what was expected, the student expected score. The difference between a student's actual achievement and his or her expected achievement is known as the value added. So how is VAM measured? A student's VAM score is representative of the difference between a student's actual achievement and his or her expected achievement. The score can be a positive or negative number. If a student did exactly as expected, their score would be 0. In this example, the student's VAM score is plus 65, the difference between her expected score of 710 and her actual score of 775. The data used in VAM calculations is inclusive of prior year scores, student attendance, suspension, mobility, gifted classification, 504 classification, and special education classification. In 2021-2022, the VAM eligible teachers are comprised in grades 4 through 8 of ELA, math, science, and social studies content, and in all grades, Algebra 1, Geometry, English 1, and English 2 content. Next, we'll move on to student learning targets. We'll begin with student learning targets for teachers. Student learning targets, or SLTs, are created to measure student progress to mastery. 2 SLTs will be required for teachers this year. SLTs include goals which express an expectation of growth in student achievement over a given period of time, as well as common measures for assessing attainment of those goals, such as identified assessment and/or a body of evidence. In other words, this formula can be used as follows in any circumstance: X outcome in X amount of time on X assessment for X number of students. If you'd like to see our SLT assessment guide, please click on the hyperlink in the PDF companion deck. When we look at leaders, current policy requires 2 student learning targets for leaders. 1 will be based on an overall student performance improvement in the current school year as measured by the school performance score, and 1 will be based on growth in a component such as math or ELA of the school performance score. To recap, teachers and leaders should develop SLTs in their first semester or immediately upon hire in order to understand teaching goals and plan for instruction accordingly. SLTs can be based upon data such as performance data from the first unit or module of the school year, formative assessment data, diagnostic data, and this year, a return to state monitored assessments is also available. Now we're going to move on to professional practice score component of evaluation. We know that when the observation and debrief cycle is embedded as a part of professional development, it can help professional staff to be their very best. It's recommended this cycle occur with frequency. Regardless of formative or summative approaches, targeted, helpful, and timely feedback and follow-up maximizes the impact of observations. The number of observation cycles required for professional practice scores at the time of this presentation is 2. Observation scores and effectiveness ratings can be seen in the chart on the right. Because VAM was not applied in 2020-2021, but will be applied in 2021-2022, there are no exceptions for 2 formal observations, as there have been in years prior. So all teachers will require 2 formal observations. Also, please remember, final scores should be entered into the CIS system. We will see how these align to in-person and virtual observation practice. As we have mentioned, observation site visits must be announced and include a pre and post conference. This portion of the evaluation may include additional evaluative evidence such as walkthrough observation data and evaluation of written work products. The Compass rubric is the state-approved professional practice rubric. Along with evaluative evidence, such as walk-through observation data and evaluation of written work products, the most common tool for these observations is the Compass rubric. This rubric is applicable independent of delivery format and is automatically approved, as is the NIET and class rubric. Some LEAs may choose to submit an alternative rubric waiver. These submissions should be sent for approval to Compass at la.gov prior to using them for formal evaluations and resubmitted for approval each time changes are made to it. For approval, the alternate rubric should be on a 4.0 scale and meet similar performance outcomes to the Compass rubric. As mentioned a few slides ago, all formal observation scores should be entered into the Compass information system with one exception: local personnel evaluations, which do not need to be entered into CIS. Incomplete evaluations should still be entered with code 99, signifying retirement, FMLA, etc. So educational leaders at the school system level who are not evaluated by Compass may be evaluated using local personnel evaluations to advance or renew an Ed Leader certificate. These scores do not need to be entered into CIS. Local personnel evaluations are kept on file at the district and attested to on an attestation form in the educational leader application packet. Let's revisit our purpose for today: to ensure equitable application of the evaluation process across the state, such that every child in school has the opportunity to grow and thrive. In order to fulfill this purpose, we need to norm on practices of observation scores and thus generate rater reliability. We're going to spend the next part of this training looking at how we use the rubric. We will use the Compass teaching rubric as an example, but the general takeaways can be applied to any observation with any approved rubric being used. If you have evaluated someone in the past, take a minute to think about your tendencies. We know that often when evaluating, it's easy to norm with a high score with the rationale that your general thoughts of the staff member are in high regard, or the opposite, rating low to allow room for growth. In this next part of the training, we will work to look carefully at the rubric indicators and supporting evidence, such as walkthrough data and written work products. Observation cycles for professional practice scores ask us to plan out how to best help the educator being observed by gathering as much data as possible with some of the questions you see on this slide. Like, how will you assign evaluators and observers? What will your observation schedule look like? What role will walkthroughs play? How can you walk through remote learning classrooms as well as in-person learning rooms? How will you know teachers are teaching the right content and students are learning based on delivery format? What materials and information should you gather in advance? What will you communicate with teachers regarding the feedback they will receive throughout the year? What time and space are set aside for peer collaboration? How will you use peers to support improvement? These are the types of questions a quality evaluator will ask in order to contribute an accurate evaluation to the professional growth process. Take a minute to pull up the Compass rubric so you can take notes as it helps you. It can be located in the Compass library or again is linked in this companion PDF. During each video, review the domain and component being evaluated before and after each video, and press pause in order to do so thoroughly. Using that portion of the rubric, we'll then rate the educator from the video. Examine each component of the strand with care. What is the dominant descriptor of what you see? Note whether you are rating the video above or below the assigned rating that is revealed at the end. The first domain of the Compass rubric we'll explore is Domain 3, Component 3B, Instruction, using questioning and discussion techniques. Let's first look at the top row and take note of the changes across the ratings from ineffective to highly effective. When we look at ineffective, we see that teachers' questions are of low cognitive challenge, single correct responses, and asked in rapid succession. Moving to effective emerging, teachers' questions lead students through a single path of inquiry with answers seemingly determined in advance. Moving to proficient, while the teacher may use some low-level questions, he or she poses questions to students designed to promote student thinking and understanding. And onward to highly effective, the teacher uses a variety or series of questions or prompts to challenge students cognitively, advance high-level thinking and discourse, and promote metacognition. Imagine how amazing our schools would be if we could move the needle of teaching to highly effective for everyone. You'll notice the quantity and quality indicators increase and decrease throughout each rating. After you've looked at the row, we suggest that you review the highly effective indicators so you know what best practice of this strand looks like, and then go backwards from there. The column we select for each video is the column that best describes, or the rating that best describes, what was seen. In your real world observations, you'll have a much longer observation, as well as walk-through data and written or virtual work products to factor in. Remember, you may see this as a wonderful lesson, but we're zooming in on the unique characteristics of using questioning and discussion techniques for the purposes of this evaluation. We want to thank the teachers who made themselves available, and we also want to acknowledge that all teachers have strengths and places to grow. The key to rater reliability is knowing where to indicate strengths and areas of growth for targeted professional development. For our first of 2 videos, we will watch a 7-minute middle school science class. Prior to watching, please make sure you return to the Compass rubric, Component 3B, and look one more time at what you'll be looking for to determine your rating.
Yeah, also like so it would just like show like if there's any faults or like how much tectonic plates.
Yeah, because where do we think faults are?
Where earthquakes.
Maybe. So maybe some like fault data?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say, Joaquin? Great. Because we also think fault data is connected to what?
Earthquakes.
Oh, so
And then maybe like this one would also be the same because maybe the fault data could be moving mountains.
my gosh. So all this data at once. So like diagram of mountains, underground maps, fault line data.
And then this one, I'm not really sure how, but we can kind of like see if it was at any place before. Like if we had like this, I don't know, it's kind of confusing, but if we like kind of go back in time, like with like a picture or something, and we see if it's like eventually somewhere else.
So are you saying like time-lapse photos?
Yeah. Or if like,
That might be hard to find though, don't you think?
yeah. I'm not really sure.
But I'm thinking back to the article too. Didn't they say something regarding like sensors?
Because maybe like 20 years ago when they started doing this, maybe it was like somewhere else in a completely different location.
So I mean, I feel like I'm hearing you say what? Joaquin, what's she saying?
I feel like she's saying like we could just like see a picture like that was like 20 years ago and see where the mountain was then, and then a picture now, and so you can see where the mountain is now.
Great. Pictures over time? Great. Love it.
Actually, that's not this question. Can earthquakes form mountains? That was my question. that was my other question.
So how can we actually figure out if an earthquake makes a mountain? I don't know if data will tell us that. Is there anything that scientists do or build to be able to?
We could build a model of an earthquake.
Yeah.
Or we could see like a lot of earthquakes and we could see if there's a lot of mountains by then. But then that would be maybe it would be this one. What makes earthquakes happen in mountains more than anywhere else.
But interestingly enough, your idea about a model, I think, is
Yeah.
that maybe you can see like how that actually happens, because that was your question, right? That's actually your question. Yeah. Can earthquakes form mountains? So maybe we can do things with a model that can help us see if a mountain is
I
actually
think
formed.
Karen was saying like with the tectonic plates and it goes up like that, which forms a mountain.
Which is weird because that's not the only movement that
Yeah.
it had, because it also went backwards, right? Interesting. But maybe a model, maybe many models can also help us figure out these different figure out something, right? Yeah. Hey, how many of you at this point maybe felt a little bit stuck? Yeah, like this is what, yeah, some of these questions are more challenging than others to answer, but I think if there's a will, there's a way. So, we're going to kind of summarize it here because obviously if I need your help, I don't know what resources to use or what kind of materials we're going to need to answer our questions. So, should we just go right through the questions or start with one? Or does someone want to be brave and go first? All right, cool. Tim, what was your name? What was your category?
We had avalanches, but not all.
Okay, I know, that was my mistake. Sorry. So your category is on avalanches. What did you guys say we should do to figure out some of the answers to our avalanche questions?
We said like to make the question was how if parts of Mount Everest break off, and if like an avalanche breaks off parts of Mount Everest, will make it thinner and like kind of taller. We said we can make a mini model out of rock and then pour ice on it to see if like anything breaks off.
So what's Tiffany saying? What can we do to figure out how avalanches may play a role on Everest? Okay.
We can make like a mini avalanche like model and just like with rocks and like put ice on it to see if it actually does something.
Great. Okay. So we've got model with, you said, rocks and ice. Great. Any other ideas for the type? Okay, cool. Table 2. You ready? What was your category?
So
Can you speak up, please?
we got Mount Everest,
Okay.
and our question that we answered was, how does Mount Everest grow taller every year? And we kind of combined that with another question, is there more mountains underground? And then we said that we can a simulator of what's happening underground, like a mountain just Mount Everest, to see if there's anything that could help it grow taller.
So what's mine saying?
Can you repeat that?
So our question was, how does Mount Everest get taller every year? And we combined that with, is there more of a mountain underground? And so we want to use a simulator of what's happening underground to see if like, anything underground could be helping it grow taller.
What's she saying? How are we going to figure out stuff about Mount Everest then? Zoe?
Using a simulator.
Is that what you said? Specifically a simulator for what now?
To see if there's any more mountain movement. Not Everest, but you know.
So like a mountain simulator in a way? Is that what you mean by it? Nathan? So such a thing as this. Okay, so mountain simulator. Any other ideas you guys have? Okay. So, you guys definitely have given me some great ideas. So if we're not going to go the volcano route, what probably makes the most sense to start with? Like come Monday when we come back to school, like where should we put our focus if it's not going to be volcanoes? Chanel? Maybe mountains? Okay. What else? Miles, we haven't heard from you today.
Earthquakes.
Yeah, maybe earthquakes. Like I feel like if we dig deeper into earthquakes, which is what happened at Everest, that can maybe give us some more insight. Okay? And I feel like I heard over simulator, data. Like maybe we need to do some more data collection before we end up building a model so we know how it works, okay? I'm really proud of you guys. You gave me some really good ideas. You gave us some great ideas where we're gonna go, okay?
Now that you've finished this video, go back to the Compass rubric and decide which rating you would give this middle school science teacher for component 3B using questioning and discussion techniques. When you're ready to see the assigned rating, you can move to the next slide. This evidence gives the middle school teacher a rating of effective proficient. This is where we begin to note our biases as raters. We may have seen amazing strengths in that lesson, students engaging in discourse, drawing their own conclusions, and overall a wonderful science lesson. But when we hone in on this strand, we note the following reasons why this strand, not the overall teacher rating, is effective proficient. And note, there's not an expectation that a teacher merit every descriptor in the column to earn the rating, but the majority of descriptors should be accomplished in each indicator. When we bear this in mind, we note the final ratings assigned on this slide. So, did you rate the same, higher, lower? You may have really good justification for your rating, but take a minute to assess why you landed on the rating that you did and what that means for your own rater reliability. So when we look at the indicator, while the teacher may use some low-level questions, she poses questions to students designed to promote student thinking and understanding. During shoulder partner work, the teacher asks 4 low-level questions, questions with 1 clear response, and 6 higher-order questions, questions where students must explain why, designed to promote student thinking. The teacher also scaffolds questions aimed toward metacognitive thought and discourse. When we look at the other 2 indicators, she also scores effective proficient. For example, the teacher does create a genuine discussion among students, provides time for them to respond, and steps aside. The teacher provides opportunities for all students to respond to her questions during small group instruction and engage with the materials. From what we see in the clip, student responses directly address the teacher's questions and objectives. During the discussion, the teacher allowed students to build on each other's responses during the discussion, asking them to formulate and initiate questions and responses. And then again, with the final indicator, teacher successfully engages most students in the discussion, employing a range of strategies to ensure that most students are heard. Most students respond to the teacher's questions, and students themselves ensured multiple voices were heard in the discussion. For our next video, we will hone in on Domain 3, Instruction Component 3C, Engaging Students in Learning. Take a minute to read across the strands and note what promotes a teacher from one scoring range to the next. And again, look at the highly effective row to backwards plan your look-fors. So if we notice this strand, ineffective means the learning tasks and activities, materials, resources, instructional groups, and technology are poorly aligned with instructional outcomes or require only rote responses, whereas highly effective, virtually all students are intellectually engaged in challenging content through well-designed learning tasks and suitable scaffolding by the teacher, and are fully aligned with the instructional outcomes. For this second video, we're only going to watch 5 minutes of our very own Nakia Graham's video. And we want to thank her for her contributions to this training. We're going to take a look at her all-girls algebra class, in which her mathematicians will be able to prove that exponential functions grow by equal factors over equal intervals.
So come on, can you change your answer? So it's not add 6, what is it doing? What operation by 2? Multiplying by 2, very good. Nakai, what is it divided by? 5, good. Equal intervals are divided by a factor of 5. 50 divided by 5 is 50. 50 divided by 5 is 10. So it's decreasing or dividing by a factor of 5. It's pretty simple. So essentially, I'm just finding a pattern of what is it multiplying by or what is it dividing by?
The numbers are 40, 43, 46, 49, and 52. So it's adding 3, which means that it will be effective.
No, because factors are multiplied by 5, it's not added.
it mean that it's for the years?
No, really no. Because it's not, it's added. It's supposed to divide or multiply.
I think it's no, because it doesn't go at an exponential rate or linear, because it goes from 1 to 3, it's +2, and then from 2 to 3, it's +3, then 16 is 4, and it's not at a constant rate, so it's not gonna be linear, and it's not multiplying or dividing, so it's not exponential, so I think it's no. No. Because it by 3.
So it's not effective because it's adding 3 instead of multiplying or dividing.
I think this is subtraction by 5.
No, it's actually divided by 2.
So would that make it linear or exponential?
Exponential.
Today we were able to prove a back over elements that exponential functions, can somebody tell me what an exponential function is? I need a hand. You should be able to know that by now. Michaela.
Where it's down by multiplication or dividing.
Okay, then good. So a pattern where each term found by multiplying or dividing. So we prove with evidence that exponential functions are patterns where each terms are found by multiplying and dividing. Grow means to do what? Increase, okay? They increase by equal factors. What were equal factors again? Okay, then good. So they multiply or divide over equal intervals. Can someone tell me what intervals are? Stages, good.
I was able to meet my lessons objectives. I had a 95% proficiency rate on my exit tickets. After this lesson, my students will continue to look at exponential graphs and tables, and then start creating exponential.
That was an abrupt stop there, but we encourage you to once again look at the Compass rubric and determine what rating you would have given Miss Graham before we reveal the rating that she was assigned. So Ms. Graham earned a rating of highly effective for this strand. Looking at each indicator here, we're able to isolate factors that contributed to the majority of the description on each highly effective indicator, evaluating Ms. Graham as highly effective. For example, from what we see, virtually all students are working in pairs to justify their responses to each problem and/or being attentive to the pair on the screen. All problems are fully aligned with the daily objective of proving the qualities of exponential functions. Additionally, when it comes to pacing and inquiry, students come back together at the end of the lesson to consolidate their understanding as a class, redefine the terms written in the objective in their own words. Through written data, we also know that 95% of her students accomplished the objective. Finally, almost all students are working together in pairs, and in cases where partners disagree with each other, they engage in mathematical discourse to arrive at the correct answer. For this reason, highly effective is the appropriate rating for this video. A virtual companion has been uploaded to the Compass library for assistance with virtual observations. Please note that the Compass rubric is effective regardless of the format that teaching and instruction takes place, be it virtual, in person, or blended. We just have a few more notes for you for this training today. We want to make sure that you know that on September 14th, the CIS system will flip over to the 2021-2022 school year. At this time, you can create rosters, add new employees, assign rubric and evaluators for the current year. You can also enter in the SLTs. We encourage those SLTs to be entered in no later than December so that teachers have enough time to progress, monitor, and use data-driven instruction the way that they are designed. We also encourage you to enter scores in ongoing. The system will close on August the 6th of 2022, but we encourage you to get all of the observations in before the close of the school year on May 2nd, 2022 for teachers later on in the fall when SPS scores come out for leaders. So thank you so much. Please make sure you fill out this survey, which is available and linked in the Companion Rater Reliability PDF. This serves as your certificate of completion. We will update the completion records of this survey in the Compass library, and we'll also post it in lieu of certificates in years past. As always, you can email us at compass@la.gov for further support. We want to close this training with sincere gratitude for all you have done and are doing to guide our staff, students, and families through all that is learned this year. Thank you again. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're keeping you in our hearts and thoughts throughout this year as you help to make our professional staff feel supported and through that support, be their very best for our students.